We love the Old West, and we've hiked a very large portion of it. We've been to all the old ghost towns along the San Pedro River between Sierra Vista and Benson. During the heyday, this stretch of river hosted vast industry and commerce. The only remnant of these days that remains is the Apache Nitrogen Company, formerly Apache Powder, which still operates in St. David, Arizona, and uses the last remaining rail spur that dates back to the Old West. It is almost impossible to believe that what is now vast areas of wilderness was, just 150 or so years ago, thriving metropolitan areas with all the modern comforts and conveniences. The big industry at that time was mining, and one of the most important elements of mining was milling, and milling needed water. This is why the mills were set up along the San Pedro River. In this video, we're going to concentrate on the mills along the San Pedro River, specifically the Lost Mill. But these were not the only mills in the area or in Arizona. There were dozens of mines and milling operations all over southeast Arizona, from the Huachuca Mountains to Gleason, Pierce, Soldier's Hole, Total Wreck, etc. Anywhere there were precious metals, there were mines, mills, and boom towns. The mills along the San Pedro River serviced mining out of Tombstone and other places. Once water was discovered in Tombstone, or because of a flood in the 1800s, the mills along the river were no longer needed, which was the beginning of the end for these old towns. When we hiked the Corbin and Gerd mills in Millville, the signage stated that there were 7 mills along the San Pedro River, and to date, we were only able to locate 6. Across Charleston Road from Millville is the Bronkow Mine and Cabin, as well as some other curious ruins. These ruins look like what is left of a small mill, and we originally thought this could be the 7th mill. On another day, we happened into the old Fairbanks schoolhouse and struck up a conversation with the docent about the mills along the river. He stated that there was supposed to be a mill built in Benson, but that it was never completed. So armed with this new information, we started doing some research and found out that there actually was a small mill in the Benson area, but it was just a 5-stamp test mill, and it wasn't located along the river. So this wasn't the mill that we were looking for. The Bronkow mill was still a good candidate for mill number 7. It was in approximately the same area as the big Millville mills, so it could be considered to be a mill on the San Pedro River, and we couldn't find any other information about any other mills. So that was it for us. The Bronkow mill was the 7th mill. So now let's fast forward to a different project and a chance find at an antique store. We did a tour of the Benson Historical Museum, which has a large display from the Apache Powder and now the Apache Nitrogen Company. The display had dynamite boxes that showed both Benson, Arizona and Curtis, Arizona as locations for the company. The companies never moved, so the town lines must have moved around the company. Curtis was a town or a population center just south of the Apache Powder plant. It had enough population to have its own train depot, and unlike Benson, Curtis is long gone and was absorbed into what is now St. David. This in itself didn't change anything about the 7th Lost Mill until we went into the antique store in Tombstone. The store was selling reproduction maps of the Tombstone vicinity and the San Pedro River mills, and right there at the top, right along the river, was the East Clifford Mill. And there was the 7th mill. Now, the docent at the Fairbanks schoolhouse told us the mill was supposed to be built in Benson, but it was never completed. Present day, this location would have been St. David, but back in those days, this area was Benson and or Curtis. So the location the docent gave us was most likely correct. It's also important to note that map makers at the time would include proposed or unfinished landmarks when making maps. So just because it shows a mill at that location doesn't mean it was actually there. So we went ahead and superimposed the reproduction map onto Google Earth, and we were able to verify that locations on the reproduction very accurately matched up with locations we visited and marked with GPS. If these locations were a match, then in theory, the unknown locations should be a match as well. So now, all we had to do was hike out there and find it. The terrain in the area of where the mill would be located is very difficult to hike. It had lots of erosion and just lots of things that made it difficult to travel. We were able to climb to some high points and rule out, at least to our satisfaction, any other locations that would host a mill. We are considering going back with a drone to look for other possible locations. This isn't really necessary, as there are only a few locations in the vicinity that would work for a mill. These mills use gravity to move material from top to the bottom, so they needed a decent sized hill to be built on, and the one that we went to met all of the criteria. It was clear that at some point excavation was done. As this spot is right along the old road and the railroad, we're fairly confident that this was the spot for the proposed East Clifford Mill. Although it is possible that the mill is in further away from the river, based on the location on the map, the proximity of the road and railroad, and the excavation, we believe this is the 7th mill along the San Pedro River. Let us know what you think in the comments, and if you have any more information, be sure to let us know. Thanks for watching.